So, what does romance actually feel like for a dismissive avoidant attachment style? And how quickly do they actually develop feelings in relationships? Well, this is a question I get asked all the time. And in today's video, we're going to unpack exactly that. We'll talk a little bit about attraction versus infatuation versus actual feelings for an avoidant attachment style, what the stages and timelines are at which they tend to develop a different relationship to each of these things. And most importantly, we'll talk about what you can do to make sure you know where you stand and that you're having open communication to lead to healthy outcomes in this relationship dynamic. Now, if you're new to this channel, my name is Thais. I put daily videos here on YouTube all about attachment styles, the subconscious mind, how we can really build the best relationships of our lives and leave the past in the past where it belongs. And if you don't want to miss any of our daily content that will really help you achieve this, hit the subscribe button below. So one of the most interesting things that I find about dismissive avoidant attachment styles versus anxious attachment styles is that they have completely different timelines through which they will go from attraction to infatuation to developing actual real feelings for somebody. And there are multiple reasons for why, which we'll get into, but I think one of the first things is to just understand the timelines. And I'll actually talk about this for all four of our attachment styles. So if you look at an anxious attachment style, for example, they will often experience attraction and infatuation in relatively close windows of time. So, for example, an anxious attachment style may sit down, have a conversation with somebody at work or around them, and they will feel maybe attraction to the person, find the person attractive, but then become infatuated very quickly based on minimal interactions. Then that infatuation to feeling timeline, where they start to really develop feelings, is also fast tracked. And the reason for this is that the anxious attachment style spends a lot of time in the fantasy world, building out scenarios and imagining different outcomes of where the relationship could go and how that would meet their needs. And they almost build feelings as much in the fantasy world as they do in reality in very early days. And so they can go from attraction to infatuation in a matter of minutes or an hour, and they can go from infatuation to feelings in a matter of a couple of days or a week. And one of the biggest reasons that we actually develop infatuation and feelings for somebody is when they meet our deeply unmet needs. So if you look at a securely attached person, they usually are good at meeting their own needs. They're good at advocating for their needs in their close relationships. In other words, they have less deeply unmet needs than you would see with an anxious attachment style. In other words, they're less likely to get as deeply infatuated so quickly. Let me give you an example. Let's say you have an anxious attachment style who felt like they had inconsistency of connection growing up, and maybe they really wanted to be seen by both of their parents and made to feel important and special. And maybe that was missing from a lot of their childhood experiences, and it was something they yearned for. But let's say a securely attached person didn't really have that same upbringing. Maybe they felt like there was a certain sense of stability and consistency, and they felt seen and heard and wanted in their upbringing. And then let's say you take both of these different attachment styles and you put them in this particular situation. Let's say that they go into a coffee shop, and in that coffee shop, they are standing in line and they spill their coffee and it goes everywhere. And the person in front of them stops, pauses, helps them clean up the coffee off of the floor, checks in with them. Hey, are you okay? Is everything fine? Is really present with them. Maybe even sits with them and has a coffee for a few minutes and asks meaningful questions and is really present during that unique conversation. Well, a secure person will probably walk away from that conversation and go, oh, I met a really pleasant stranger today. That was so kind. That was so thoughtful of the person. And they'll feel like that's a reflection of that person. Whereas an anxious attachment style may sit there and go, wow, I feel so deeply connected to this person. We have a special connection. It's about us, because they are getting a deeply unmet need met by that person who's very present, who's making them feel seen and heard and wanted or important in those moments and interactions. And thus, they are more likely to move into infatuation very quickly. Now, fearful avoidance and dismissive avoidance, because they tend to each have their guards up a little bit more for various reasons, and fear around letting their guard down or letting themselves receive needs from other people as much, you will see that ability to go from attraction to infatuation is a little bit less. So if we go back to this idea, like attraction to infatuation, attraction can be pretty instantaneous, But infatuation will be a little slower for a secure versus an anxious attachment style. And even though fearful avoidance and dismissive avoidance both have deeply unmet needs, they usually have fears of vulnerability or relying on people or opening themselves up or getting their needs met from other people, essentially, which can cause their ability to develop strong feelings of infatuation to be a little bit slower. And of course, then their ability to develop really strong feelings in general to also be slowed down. So let's stop going through all 4 different attachment styles and just hone in here on the dismissive avoidant for a moment. So attraction for them will be pretty instantaneous, but infatuation, because dismissive avoidants often have this deep core assumption that their needs are not going to get met by people anyways. And so they basically write off in their mind their ability to even try to get their needs met from other people. And as a result, it takes a little bit more time for them to really warm up, for them to let their guard down, for them to experience their needs being met by other people. It's often something they literally don't just avoid doing, but they even sometimes fear having their needs met by other people, fearing that then they'll rely on them and be left feeling helpless or be controlled or trapped if they rely on other people too much. And so there can be a lot of hesitation, which causes even that infatuation piece to often be slower to develop. Now, I want to highlight this with a study. So there was a study done by somebody named Julian Holt. I think it was in 2010. And they had, I want to say, 280,000 participants in this study. And what they did is they took all these individuals and they basically tracked the impact of loneliness on their health. And at the end of the study, they basically concluded that being lonely and experiencing chronic loneliness had similar health impacts to smoking a pack of cigarettes a day. Now, that's a real study and a real thing. But then somebody came in and they did a study on that study and they said, okay, well, what is loneliness? How do we define loneliness? And what this next study found was that loneliness was less about individuals actually having people around them or an absence of having people around them, and instead found that loneliness, people could have lots of friends or acquaintances and still feel really lonely. Loneliness was actually about if people felt like they had a real vulnerability and meaningful connection in their relationships. So you could take, for example, somebody with a whole bunch of relationships around them, but no real connection, no real, meaning in that relationship. And that person could still be chronically lonely. Or you could take somebody with 1 or 2 really close people that they could really be themselves with, really be vulnerable with. And even though that person only had 1 or 2 close people, they actually reported being less lonely. And the number one factor that really was conclusive in determining what loneliness was experienced by somebody else as was there real vulnerability in the relationship? Did people feel like they could really let their guard down, be themselves, let people in? And this has so much to do with how we move in our romantic relationships from infatuation into feelings. Because we can have a crush on somebody, but developing real feelings comes through vulnerability. And so you'll see here, because dismissive avoidants often feel like vulnerability is risky to them. They'll often downplay or rationalize their emotions. They'll flaw find. They'll do things to actively keep people at arm's length so that they don't have to be vulnerable. Well, then, of course, you're going to see a dismissive avoidant take the longest time out of all 4 attachment styles to develop real feelings. So if we look at an attraction for a dismissive avoidant as being more instantaneous, if we look at attraction to infatuation, this may be something that a dismissive avoidant doesn't even really let themselves feel for sometimes a month or at least quite a few weeks, compared to, for example, an anxious attachment style being more immediate. And then infatuation into feelings, actual real feelings for a dismissive avoidant are highly unlikely to develop before the 2-month mark. And I'm saying this from my experience of working with tens of thousands of individuals over the years. I have rarely seen that happen. I've seen infatuation and limerence where somebody kind of obsesses about somebody, but when you ask that dismissive avoidant, hey, you keep thinking about this person, but you have feelings for them, they will, when they unpack it themselves, say consistently, no, it's just infatuation. I know it's just a crush. I don't really know this person that well. And so they have this understanding that those are not real feelings. And feelings will be correlated and developed in tandem with how much the dismissive avoidant allows themselves to be vulnerable with the other person. Now, I do want to go into for a moment how you can actually create a landscape in the relationship for any attachment style to be vulnerable to increase the chances that we can really get to that real feeling part with somebody. But before I do, I just want to let you know that if you want to do a deep dive into healing your attachment style or going in and understanding somebody else's attachment style in a relationship, you can check out fully for free for a limited time. We have courses all about how to heal your own attachment style in the shortest period of time possible by leveraging neuroscience and behavioral science. And then we have courses about understanding all other people's attachment styles and really what they need at different stages of relationship and as they're building emotions and what that looks like. So you can start getting a user manual to yourself and how to heal, but also a user manual of understanding somebody else that may confuse you, be it a friend, a family member, a romantic partner, somebody you're dating, a coworker. So we'll put a link to check that all out down below. Now, what I want to just leave by saying here is that when we have conditions that create vulnerability in a relationship, that allows somebody to lower their guard and thus have a greater likelihood of developing feelings. It's not the only thing that plays into development of feelings, but it's basically a foundational pillar. And so much of what a dismissive avoidant is often looking for when it comes to can they be vulnerable are a few crucial needs being met. Is this person empathetic? Is this person accepting or are they judgmental? If somebody's really judgmental and sharp and critical, a dismissive avoidant will not let themselves drop their guard. They feel terrified of being seen as defective or shameful, and they do not want to be judged. So is this person empathetic? Are they somebody who's actually accepting? Are they somebody who's supportive, who looks out for you, who has your back, who checks in with you? And are they somebody who acknowledges when you're making an effort and tries to see the best in you? Now, I'm not saying that somebody should just, bend over backwards and really do backflips to try to make sure that you have all these things met for an avoidant all the time. But these are needs that in any relationship will really help foster connection. And these are also needs that if you are any attachment style listening are important to advocate for in your own relationship, that are important for you to receive as well. Because the more these things are here, the more there's actually a background in the relationship of us being able to truly feel like we can let our guard down, let our true selves be seen and known. And we'll be a lot quicker to then find out if this relationship dynamic is truly compatible as a result. If you're somebody who's truly interested in helping others while also securing financial freedom for your future, there is a limited time option to join our 50% off certified relationship coach program. And this is a 12-week program where you can create financial freedom, work from anywhere in the world, and truly make an impact on other individuals' lives by becoming a certified relationship coach in just 12 weeks. Throughout this entire 12 weeks, you will learn all of the tools that you need to discover somebody's attachment style and help them heal and change their attachment style if they are insecurely attached so that they can become secure and build the best relationships of their life. On top of that, you'll learn all about the subconscious mind and how to actually rewire our painful limiting beliefs, our painful behavioral patterns, and help your clients learn their relationship needs, as well as the needs of their loved ones. You'll also learn how to build a thriving coaching practice and set yourself up for long-term success. You'll learn all of the business tips and tools you need to build funnels, leverage marketing strategies, and really thrive in the marketplace. Even if you have absolutely no coaching experience, this certification will give you everything you need starting from scratch to become a thriving relationship coach. You can find more using the link down below. So that's it for today. If you don't want to miss any of our future videos, please subscribe. And if you want to check out any of those attachment style healing courses or attachment style user manuals for connecting and understanding other individuals, there's that free link for a limited time down below in the description. Thank you for watching.